Hi there, everybody. My name's Gurpreet Sidhu, and I'm the founder of Border VAT, and I'm going to be talking about how to make your life easier when it comes to VAT compliance. The software I've developed myself, it's taken a couple of years, being an online seller myself and seeing the problems that I've faced selling online and just grabbing all that data from all the different channels that you're selling on. You know, it's an extra burden that you don't really need. So the software is an automated way to stay on top of your VAT. It's looking at your EU distance selling thresholds. It's looking at what taxes you need to pay into which country, when you need to register, and maybe even deregister, depending on your sales. So I'm going to go straight into it. For those that probably... one second. All right, so really simple, VAT. You've got output VAT, you've got input VAT. So my software is all about your output VAT. So it's not an accountancy piece of software which is going to help you on your purchase invoices, etc. But it's going to help you with all your different sales, whether it be on eBay or on Amazon or Wish.com, etc. You've got different currencies. You've got fulfillment by Amazon, etc. You've got the eBay global shipping program. So things can get very complicated when it comes to trying to work out what your VAT should be on just your sales. So that's what it's all about. So simply output VAT is charged on sales and it's collected from the end consumer, so B2C, and it's paid to the government. When you're doing input VAT, you're paying it on purchases, but then you just reclaim that back from the government. So that's a neutral B2B, but the software is all about B2C. Right, so I've already mentioned some of this. B2B, if you're selling now cross-border, you have to, a reverse charge is applied by the buyer on their local VAT return. So in effect, it cancels out between your input and your output if you're doing B2B transactions across countries. But the majority of the people here that are selling on marketplaces are dealing with the end consumer, so it's B2C, and that's where the sellers are charged VAT, and then we need to pay the correct VAT government, the correct tax in the correct currency at the right time. So that's what it's all about. If you're exporting now, that's sales which go outside of Europe. So if you're shipping to, say, Australia, or you're shipping to even the Channel Islands or Guernsey, for example, any sales which you ship there actually become zero rated. So you may be paying tax on sales where you don't need to be. So a quick recap. If you look at the industry on the left, you've got distribution, and then you've got yourself, the merchant, which is that shop. All of that is B2B, so it's neutral. You pay it and you reclaim it. So that's pretty straightforward. But the problem arises on the B2C side, where the VAT office expects to collect the money which you've collected from the end consumer. That starts to get complicated because you've got lots of different channels that you're selling on. There's lots of different currencies that you're selling in. There's lots of different countries that you're supplying to. You may or may not be using Amazon fulfillment centers. You might be using third-party fulfillment centers. You may be using the eBay global shipping program. So you can't be looking at a channel's data and saying Amazon.co.uk is going to be my HMRC tax return. It doesn't work like that. You have to bring all of your sales data into one melting pot, and then you have to start pigeonholing every transaction into the correct VAT office. So somebody that uses my software, they have over 3,000 transactions a day, you know, and they're crisscrossing all around Europe or outside of Europe. They've got currencies, 10 to 12 different currencies that are coming through the system, and we normalize all that data. We monitor your EU distance selling thresholds. For those that don't know, your EU distance selling thresholds are basically, just like here in the UK, you have a domestic selling threshold, which is now £85,000. There's a set of thresholds for every country in Europe. Most of them are around about €35,000. If you ship more than €35,000 worth of goods into that country, then basically that government, say it's the French government, turns around and says, you no longer need to pay taxes in the UK. We would like to have those taxes paid here in France. That's basically the essence of it. So those tax offices want their VAT to be paid on a monthly basis, really. Here in the UK, it's every 3 months, but when it comes to Germany, France, Poland, etc., if you're using the pan-EU network, you're going to be paying every month. So if you think it's a burden having to work out your VAT every 3 months, think what it's going to be like having to work it out every month. And not just for one VAT office, but maybe 7, 8, if not more VAT offices. So it's just going to add up to your workload. So the idea behind the software is to automate that. Collect the data, normalize the data, and work out what your VAT should be. Right, so as a seller, you're going to be asking yourselves these questions. When do I need to register for VAT? Have I registered in the correct EU countries? Am I monitoring my EU distance selling thresholds? How much do I need to pay? Where do I need to pay it? You know, it sounds silly, but Germany has so many different tax offices, and you need to be paying the correct one. Otherwise, you'd be missing your payment. So, and how often? Germany, for example, every month, and then there's an annual return as well. So that's 13 filings on top of whatever filings that you're already doing. And are there any special requirements? So, for example, Poland, they want sequential invoicing for all your sales that happened that were shipped from Poland. They have a special SAFT report. Other countries have other reports which you need to provide along with your VAT returns. So all of this compliance starts adding up. You could pay some top firms to do it, or you could have it all automated. That's the idea behind the software, is to make your life easier and everything there at a click of a button. So I've mentioned EU distance selling thresholds. I know that graph's a little bit small to see, but basically all it's outlining is what the thresholds are. I think 80% of them are about 35,000 euros, but then it's also highlighting, and you can see with this sort of color gradient, that you've got VAT rate as low as 17%. I think that's Luxembourg, as high as 27% in Hungary. Sweden is 25%. So not only are you having to deal with, I need to pay VAT in a different country, but there's different rates to be applied. And that could be hitting your bottom line as well. So maybe you need to start thinking about your pricing structure if you're shipping cross-border to account for that extra 5% that you're going to have to pay for items shipped into Sweden. But in other countries, Germany, for example, the VAT rate's 19%. So you'll be saving 1% based on your 20% here in the UK. So those are things to consider. The distance selling thresholds are calculated from the 1st of January to the 31st of December, and they reset at the end of every year. So this is actually really important, because if the distance selling threshold is 35,000 euros in France, for example, our software will be monitoring your threshold all throughout the year, and it could be that by month 10 or 11, you've hit 30,000. So it'll warn you that at this rate, you're going to break the threshold in this year. So it's giving you that control of whether you want to register now in December, or do you want to slow down your sales in France for the last few days, because it's going to reset on the 31st of December and you're going to be back to zero again. And you could save yourself on French compliance for a year, basically, you know, or a good few months. So most are 35,000 euros. Germany is 100,000 euros, which is a big one. The key point here for anybody that's selling on Amazon and using fulfillment centers is if you're using the Amazon Pan-EU network and they've moved your goods around the 7 countries, they've got Czech Republic now, they've got Poland as part of their warehouse structure, mainly because it's cheaper to store there and cheaper to ship into Belgium and to ship into Germany. But what that does for you is it effectively makes the threshold in those countries 0, which means you need VAT numbers, and you need to be registered, and you need to be doing filings. So if you've ticked that box, the Pan-EU network, right now, you should be filing in 7 countries every month. Well, the UK every 3 months, but the other 6 every month. And it's not just your VAT filing. You're going to probably have your Intrastat, if you've broken the Intrastat threshold, maybe an EC sales list, sequential invoicing. So there's all this extra burdens that are placed on you as an online seller. Right, so this is a typical setup that I've just drawn up. If that's your shop, you've got a website, you're selling on eBay, you're selling on Amazon, you could also be selling on, I don't know, Wish or AliExpress or Shopify, etc. If you look from the left to the right, what happens is you're selling on so many different channels, you're collecting so many different currencies, and at the end of it, you've got your NatWest or Barclays Sterling account, and you lose a lot of information from left to right. So on the left, you know who your customer was, where you shipped the item from, what the product was, what the SKU was, what the commodity code was, how much the shipping was, what the amount was, when it was paid for, and when it was shipped. But by the time you get that macro number in your NatWest account at the end of every week or whenever you get that settlement, you've lost a lot of information, and you can't be working out your VAT on just numbers on a bank statement. You have to go all the way back. So one, you have to collect all your information and put it into one pot, and then you then have to pigeonhole every transaction into the correct VAT office, whilst at the same time monitoring your EU VAT threshold. So it starts becoming quite a burden. Remember I said that you may want to look at different pricing for different countries. This is based on a basket of £120. So I've just put the channel fee is approximately 15%, so that's the same. The product cost, I think I put in £50, that's the same. Shipping cost, I put £5, that's the same. But now, if that basket was to the UK with a 20% margin, or if it went to Sweden with a 25% margin, or Germany with a 19% margin, those green boxes at the bottom is your gross margin, how much it would change if that basket price you didn't account for because you're shipping into different countries. So you can see that variation at the bottom is anything from 19% profit, gross profit, to as high as, well, as low as 19% to as high as 23.2. So, there's a good 3-point difference there in your margins. And when you're doing volume, which is the point of you selling on marketplaces, that's going to add up, So you need to be wary about that. And maybe you want to change your pricing when it comes to selling on different channels. So anyway, when it comes to VAT, how do you work it out? If you were to do this manually, and I've gone through the process already, it's about collating all of your sales data. In that example I just gave you, that's 12 channels. That means logging into 12 different channels, downloading the FBA report, the order report, the settlement report, the full PayPal transactional list, reconciling it against different reports because not all the information is in that single report, being a wizard at Excel, doing VLOOKUPs, mapping data across. You've got data which has got commas instead of decimal points, euros use commas, you've got the long date format for Germany, etc., etc. You've got this plethora of different reports, all in different formats. You've got to normalize all that data, which is going to be time and effort. So if you were doing this manually, that's what you need to do. And because that's a human process, you could make mistakes. I did this myself, and one time I remember I think I copy-pasted the same data twice, and I paid double the VAT. That's how easy it is to do when you're doing it every month, right? And that was a lot of data, a lot of rows added, and I only realized the following month. So manually it can be done. I'm not saying it can't, but I've done it, and there's mistakes, and it's time-consuming. So there's got to be a better way, and that's where the software comes in. So you're selling on, at the moment we're integrated with all these marketplaces, so we will pull in all of your sales transactional data. That means sales and refunds in any currency, and we will get that automatically, so you're not having to go in every month and grab that data. And then the VAT software does its magic, and at the end of it, you get a simple Excel report which tells you what your VAT filings are in every country. It's as simple as that. And you can do with that report as you please. So in some countries, you can register yourself and file your returns yourself. In other countries, it's a lot more difficult. Spain, Poland, etc. are way more difficult. But at least you've got control. A lot of the hard work and effort has been done for you. So that's what the software is all about. And at the moment, we're plugging into, I think, 3, 4, 5, 8 different channels. This is the dashboard. The really cool thing about the software is you're going to get to see all your sales data from day one of selling. So if you've been selling on Amazon for the last 7 years and PayPal for the last 10, I'm going to get all that data. You're going to see it all in one place at the same time. Everything's going to be normalized into your base currency. You're going to be able to drill into it. You're going to be able to pull out some reports. And the really cool part is you're going to be able to get through the software every single VAT filing that you should have filed over the last 5, 6, 7, whatever many years, and compare it against what you have been filing. Maybe you forgot to register in Germany. Like in my example, I registered in Germany 6 months late because I just didn't know about the EU distance selling thresholds. So the software is going to pick all of that information up. There's no limit to the amount of data that you've got or how many sales you're making, etc. And at the end of it, from the dashboard, you're going to be able to drill in and get an Excel report to file your VAT return. This is a company that uses the software, and on it you can see in green all their PayPal sales, in blue all their Amazon Europe sales, and we've even got the Amazon US sales. And you might think, why is Amazon US integrated into a EU VAT compliance software module? It's because there's nothing stopping somebody using Amazon.com placing an order in dollars and having it shipped into Europe. It's as simple as that. So if a product ships back into Europe, it becomes liable for EU VAT. So that seller may not be European. They may, in this case, they are. They may be Chinese. They might be US. But anything that crisscrosses across European borders is liable for EU VAT. So you need to start monitoring it. So here you can see there's 5 different currencies: Australian dollars, euros, pounds, US dollars, Canadian dollars. A quick summary. So, it's a completely different way of looking at your sales, which if you're using aggregators right now, like Limworks or Channel Advisor or, Magento, or you're running your own ERP system, you probably haven't got that in-depth style of reporting. Right. I don't know if you can see that, but the top country there, it says Austria, and this company is 53% towards the Austrian threshold of 35,000 euros. So I can't remember what time period of this is. It might be 6 months in, might be June or July. But at a glance, you're in control. You know straight away that I'm halfway towards the Austrian threshold. But I think it's a bit later in the year because it's telling you underneath that at this rate, in 14 months, you'll have to register for Austria. So you don't need to worry about it because by the 12th month of the year, it's going to reset. So at a glance, you can have a look at what your thresholds are and whether you need to register. Again, you can think of this the opposite way. You could use it to slow down your sales. So if that said in 1 month's time, you're going to have to register in Austria, and it's November now, you could start slowing down your sales into Austria and miss the threshold altogether, so you don't have to register until the following year. So that's quite powerful. This is an interesting example. France. So this is another report that we can pull up. For this company, these are the sales that were happening to France. So just to France, that counted towards the French distance selling threshold. And you can see the accumulated sales every year, there weren't very much, but then they spiked in 2015. But during these early years, 2012 to 2015, the French EU distance selling threshold was 100,000 euros. And then it came down to 35. And in the latter part of 2015, this company, or early 2016, went through the 35,000 euros. So that makes them liable for French VAT returns. So the software is built in with all the EU VAT laws, and it's got all the percentages, the thresholds, all the compliance logic built in. So you don't have to educate yourself or become an expert. It's all there. You just need to plug in your channel data, and it will work out when you need to register and what you need to pay and when you need to pay it. On the dashboard, so for this company, here's a summary of 3 months in the year, so July, August, September. They've got their UK figures, gross and VAT, the Germany and the French, and I've got some clients that have got 10, 15 different registrations, and there's a summary. So straight away, you can monitor on a monthly basis or during the month what your cash flow is looking like, how much VAT you're going to be liable to pay at the end of the month. So it just makes your life easier. It's as simple as that. Right, so the end result, that Excel report, I know I'm probably going over now, but this is what it looks like. So this is what you need for your VAT. You need the date of the transaction, you need what currency it happened in, what was the sale amount, the product name, because you might have reduced rated goods. You want to be able to filter for kids' clothing, example. You could use the SKU to do that. What country it was shipped from, what country it's shipped to, whether it's an EU sale or not, what VAT office that applies to. So remember I was saying you have to bring all your sales into a melting pot, and then you need to pigeonhole them one by one. So every sale, line by line, at the same time, dynamically looking at the EU distance selling thresholds, you need to then pigeonhole every cell into the correct VAT office. Depending on the VAT office, you may need to then, you've got a different VAT rate, so you've got 20s there for the UK, zeros for exports, you've got 19 for the German VAT office, and then you may have to change that sale into a different currency. So you might have got it in pounds, but because you're paying German VAT, it needs to be in euros, and then you need to record the FX rate which has been applied. So all of that is in the software. You get your gross, your net, and your VAT. So that's the crux. So it's basically making your life easier, doing work that you would have to laboriously do yourself month in, month out, and making that automated. So at a click of a button, you've got your VAT report. And I think that is the end of the presentation. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, but otherwise, that's that. Thank you for listening. Thank you very much. Cool. No questions? Yeah.
So you have to register for VAT. Well, if the product's stored in say Germany,
Yep.
from day one, does the software differentiate between sales that you fulfilled yourself or the ones that say Amazon have fulfilled in Germany?
I need to move back to this side, otherwise there'll be feedback. Basically, yeah, the software differentiates eBay Global Shipping Program and Amazon Fulfillment Network, so it'll know that it was shipped from an Amazon warehouse. But your problem is whether you've hit a threshold or not, as soon as some goods leave an Amazon warehouse in a different country, say you're based in the UK, so you made your first sale and it was a domestic sale in Germany, which Amazon fulfilled from a German warehouse, that threshold is no longer 100,000, it becomes 0, and then you need to, the software picks it up and it'll notify you, and you need to be VAT registered from that day. That's it.
Is that true for any fulfillment within the country itself?
Any fulfillment warehouse around Europe, yeah. That's true for any fulfillment. So it'll bring the threshold down to 0. So it doesn't apply. And the key thing, I don't know if you picked it up from my presentation, if you're monitoring these thresholds, don't make the mistake of adding up your gross totals. It's actually the net amount that counts towards the threshold, because you're already paying the VAT somewhere, probably here in the UK. So if it was a £12 sale and you paid £2 VAT here in the UK, but it was shipped to Germany, just £10 would count towards that 100,000 threshold. So that's, I forgot to mention that in the presentation. So if you're doing thresholds, remember it's the net amount, not the gross amount. Yep.
Some products have different VAT in different countries.
Yep.
Does the software take care of that?
Right. So it's a really good question. Am I still live? No, I think I've been killed off now. All right. Oh, we're back on. All right, yeah. So yeah, different products, different SKUs. We've built in the software so you can map SKUs with your own reduced rates, etc. So if you've got a special SKU structure which identifies, because the software can't work out what your product is, so you need to make a relationship between a product name or a SKU with a reduced rate. So we can pick that up and we can fill in the gaps. So you can upload the data once, and then yeah, it'll assign the correct VAT rate against the correct product. Yeah, they're different VAT rates.
The VAT applies on the products yourself in those countries.
Yeah, that's, to be fair, it gets more and more complicated, yeah? Especially when you're selling in obscure categories. So, I know coffee is a special one. Coffee in different countries, there's different VAT rates, etc. And the software can't be an expert on every product. You're the expert on your product, right? So that's why simply uploading what the VAT rate should be for each country on your product, because as you can imagine, there's millions of products. Can't be an expert on every product, but you're an expert on your product. So you upload that data, it will assign the correct VAT rate for the country that it's sold into. That's the way to do it. Yeah? Brilliant. Thank you very much.